Well, good evening. I'm Kellie Meyer in for Blake Berman. Tonight, major changes in the Twin Cities. The Trump administration reshaping its immigration enforcement, announcing a drawdown of 700 officers.
That is largely contingent upon the end of the illegal and threatening activities against ICE and its federal partners that we're seeing in the community.
Plus, fighting fraud. Senators demand answers from accused fraudsters in Minnesota. House Oversight Chairman James Comer is with me in a moment to share where his investigation stands. And also tonight, up against the clock, investigators scrambling for clues in the search for Savannah Guthrie's mom. It stretches now into its fourth day. Her pacemaker providing new evidence tonight. And big game bets, nearly $2 billion on the line for Super Bowl Sunday. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie on the wild, wild west of sports betting. But first tonight, ICE is on the move out of Minneapolis.
Mr. President, speaking of Minneapolis, what did you learn?
I learned that maybe we can use a little bit of a softer touch, but you still have to be tough. These are criminals. We're dealing with really hard criminals.
So this coming as the administration tries to move attention to the border, while up on Capitol Hill, the DHS funding fight shifts into high gear. The department announcing more than 4,000 illegal immigrants have been arrested in Minnesota. Embattled Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem celebrating the administration's efforts to curb illegal immigration in Nogales, Arizona today. Noem under fire for her handling of the ICE shootings in Minnesota. Ali Bradley heard from Secretary Noem today, and Jessica Cartalia is tracking all of the developments from Tom Homan's announcement in Minneapolis. So, Jessica, let's start with you and tell us about Homan's announcement today. What did you hear?
Well, Kelly, it was quite big news today. Homan saying that this was unprecedented collaboration with sheriff's deputies and state jails, allowing ICE to take custody of people while they were still incarcerated before they were back on the streets, certainly allowed them to pull back some of those officers who were on the ground. He says he's stressing that the primary focus will still remain on making it possible to reduce the number of agents, but also getting anyone with a violent criminal history or in the country illegally with a violent criminal history off of the streets. Now, according to federal figures announced today, that Minnesota operation has led to the arrest of hundreds of people with serious convictions. And he's talking about homicide and sex crime convictions, gang affiliations, and whatnot. Also saying, Kelly, that doesn't exempt everyone who's in the country illegally from being taken into custody if they do not have a criminal background, but they will put the precedent on getting those people off of the streets.
And Ali, what was Secretary Noem's message today?
Today from the DHS Secretary Kelly was one of celebration. She was touting the success of the secure border. That's what they call it, a year of a secure border. 96% decrease in crossings in January. They've had 9 straight months where they have not released anyone into the country. But here's the thing. Here's something they didn't talk about. They didn't talk about the gotaways, the people who are still successfully evading law enforcement. Our sources say around 900 a month are still coming in, evading Border Patrol every single month. And that is something that they're still working on, saying that they're trying to get more work done here, that they want full operational control. But they also talked a lot about the border wall, celebrated the border wall, even talking about the black panels of that wall that the president had, that was at his request to paint that wall black. Now, when it comes to the wall, though, that is moving at a glacial pace. We know that Secretary Noem reportedly is sitting on unsigned construction contracts right now, so they're not necessarily doing a lot there. But take a listen to what she said as they point the finger back to Biden once again.
In President Trump's first year back in office, we've delivered the most secure border in American history. It is so quiet here now today that sometimes we even forget how bad it was.
Now, I think one of the most interesting things, Kelly, that we heard is that the morale is the highest it's ever been. But when you talk to agents and officers on the ground, that's just not the case. The morale is very low for them, especially if they're working interior enforcement, Kelly.
Well, Ali Bradley, Jessica Cartalia, thank you both so much. Well, a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee just wrapped a highly anticipated hearing over allegations of welfare fraud in Minnesota, where prosecutors estimate billions were stolen from social services programs in the state. So this reported criminal behavior, of course, was the precursor for federal agents in Minneapolis. I will talk to the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, who is also investigating widespread fraud. But first, News Nation Washington correspondent Joe Khalil with what we are learning. Joe.
Hey, Kelly, so this is the third hearing on this topic, the first one in the Senate now. And what was interesting, it stood out to me, you had three witnesses. Two Republicans brought forward, one the Democrats brought forward. All three seem to agree on the fundamentals, which is fraud did happen in Minnesota to an exorbitant amount, estimates of $9 billion, and that all want to see the federal government be more active in stepping in. David Hoke, one of the Republican witnesses, you might recognize him from that now viral video with YouTuber Nick Shirley. He was there. I talked to him exclusively afterward. He said he wants to see the federal government start to prosecute people, not just the people that actually committed the fraud, but state officials who, he says, facilitated and allowed it with their negligence. Take a listen here.
We need the federal government to come in, and you have to threaten these people with federal prosecution, the people who are writing the checks, because if you're chasing money overseas and wires, and it's a waste of time. You've got to cut off the funding at the source.
Democrats and their witness, Robert Weissman, again, didn't disagree with some of that, but also tried to spend their time in this hearing pointing the finger at the Trump administration for its part. Take a listen.
This committee is absolutely right to focus on fraud. Senator Cruz is absolutely right to bring his righteous anger against fraud. But that fraud is not limited to Minnesota. That is small potatoes compared to what this administration is perpetrating. I encourage this committee to focus on that fraud.
So we did have one state official there today, Kelly, but next month in an oversight hearing, we're going to see Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison testifying. So this topic is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Joe Khalil up on Capitol Hill for us. Thank you. So we're now joined by House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer of Kentucky. Congressman, thank you for joining us. I wanted to start out first with your reaction to that report and what happened on Capitol Hill today.
Well, I think that's pretty accurate. There was a lot of fraud. Everyone agrees about that. Now, the next question that every angry taxpayer in America has is who's responsible for the fraud? And that's where our House Oversight investigation with respect to the Minnesota fraud within the welfare system is going. We're bringing in for transcribed interviews and depositions the state officials who were in charge of various welfare programs that we believe committed massive amounts of fraud to the tune of billions of dollars. And we're also bringing in those whistleblowers. If you'll remember, this all started when a few state employees in Minnesota sent a tweet out saying that there was massive amounts of fraud in the Minnesota welfare system and that they had alerted state and federal officials about this fraud for many years. So we're bringing in, we've already had 2 transcribed interviews. We have one tomorrow. That'll be the 3rd. We expect to have between 8 and 12 interviews and depositions prior to our March 4th hearing, where we'll have both Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison in front of the committee. And by that time, we should have a lot of evidence of potential fraud in Minnesota.
I wanted to ask you as well about Tom Homan's announcement today, removing some of those agents from Minnesota. You received praise from President Trump for your comments over the weekend in which you suggested the president consider removing federal agents from the state altogether. Did that come as a surprise to you?
Well, you never know. I'm glad that President Trump liked my interview. I did that on a network that he watches a lot. But, you know, I think what I said is something that I'll give him credit. He obviously agreed with. Look, it's not working there. What is the objective in Minnesota and what is the objective with ICE? The objective with ICE in Minnesota or in the other 49 states is to apprehend the criminal illegals and deport them back to wherever they came from. That's what the objective is. So they had a lot of ICE agents in Minnesota. It was getting out of hand, and I think that, you know, they had to hit the reset button. The president, to his credit, sent Tom Homan in there. He got the temperature turned way down. He negotiated the release of around 126 criminal illegals that were being held in state and county prisons. I don't know if they've all been turned over yet, but that's what the negotiations are. Once those inmates are turned over, then I think we focus on the other cities. And obviously, with Minneapolis being a sanctuary city, as ICE continues to apprehend criminal illegals around the United States, they're going to keep pouring into those sanctuary cities. And then I think you go back in and have a more intense raid. So I appreciate what ICE is doing. I support ICE. I think it got a little hot in Minnesota, and to the president's credit, he got the temperatures cooled down, and he's back to the mission of deporting the criminal illegals.
Let's shift to the other big news this week, bringing in Bill and Hillary Clinton. There was a lot of news on that over the last 48 hours. What is really the goal here for you bringing them in to testify?
Well, this started with a bipartisan vote in the Oversight Committee. There was a motion made by a Democrat to subpoena the Epstein files, thus beginning a formal investigation by the Oversight Committee. A Republican member of that subcommittee amended the motion and put 7 or 8 names on. They were Republicans and Democrats. The Clintons were on that list. Everyone on the committee voted for that. So that's how the Clinton subpoena began. The other 6 names that the committee voted on, they all complied with their subpoenas, 2 of which were high-ranking Republicans in the Trump administration, Bill Barr and Alex Acosta. But who we never heard from were the Clintons. They kept saying they would come in, and they didn't. For nearly 6 months, they blew us off and delayed, and finally the contempt vote came. They saw that not only were all the Republicans going to vote for it, but several Democrats. They saw a majority of Democrats vote for it in committee, the contempt. We were fixing to bring it on the floor today. It was scheduled to be voted on today, and then they came and said, okay, we'll comply with your subpoena. So hopefully they'll show up in 2.5 weeks, and we're going to ask them questions I think every American has. Epstein was in the White House a lot when Clinton was president. They were obviously close with Ghislaine Maxwell. She was a guest at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. No one's accusing them of wrongdoing. We just have questions.
I do want to ask, though, does that set the precedent, though, for then if Democrats come in to the majority to then call for Trump in the future?
Well, look, it's no question if the Democrats come in the majority, they've already said their whole platform is they're going to try to impeach Trump. They're going to harass Trump. We saw that after Trump left the White House the first time. I knew some reporters were saying, oh, this is the Comer precedent. It's a precedent now. You can go after a former president. The Democrats already set that precedent. And this bringing the Clintons in is not retaliation or retribution to Trump. It's just their name pops up a lot in the Epstein documents. And unlike President Trump, who answers questions every day about Jeffrey Epstein, to my knowledge, neither Bill Clinton nor Hillary Clinton have ever answered a question publicly about the Epstein. So we have some questions. Hopefully it'll go over well, and maybe we can learn some information that'll help us determine how Epstein was able to curry favor with rich and famous. Where did Epstein's money come from? And maybe it'll help us with our investigation.
And speaking of questions, we know Melinda Gates, the former wife of Bill Gates, seemed to suggest that her ex-husband has some questions to answer when it comes to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Listen to this, and then we'll talk more on the other side.
No girl should ever be put in the situation that they were put in by Epstein and whatever was going on with all of the various people around him. Those questions are for those people and for even my ex-husband. They need to answer to those things.
Will you subpoena Bill Gates?
Well, I think that it's a pretty good bet that he's going to be asked by the committee to answer some questions. That's how the subpoena process starts. You don't just issue a subpoena on day one. You invite someone to come in. I think after the Melinda Gates interview, after members of Congress have already approached me in both parties requesting that, I think it's probably a decent bet that we will be asking Bill Clinton some questions. Hopefully he'll come in. If he refuses to cooperate, then I think a subpoena is highly likely.
So Bill Gates is likely a yes. Then what about Elon Musk?
Well, I mean, what we've seen, I haven't seen anything that would suggest that Musk was a part of Epstein. All I saw were emails that showed Epstein trying to get in with Musk. He got in with all the billionaires and millionaires. If there's evidence that emerges with Musk, then I think he would be on the table too. Look, we're not trying to pick on anyone. We're not trying to embarrass anyone. We're not trying to be partisan. We're just trying to get answers. And I think I haven't seen thus far any evidence that would suggest that Musk warrants being brought in by the Oversight Committee. Now, if that happens, then that's certainly something that would be on the table. With respect to Gates, that's something we're considering. Certainly, we're serious about the investigation. We've got Ghislaine Maxwell set for a deposition next week. We have another deposition prior to the 2 Clinton depositions. So we have 4 depositions on the books over the next 2.5 weeks in the Epstein investigation. So we're moving along really fast for a congressional committee. So we're trying to focus on what we have, and then we'll expand it if we need to expand it.
Congressman, thank you for your time tonight. We'll definitely keep in touch on this. Well, a new twist in the search for an NBC News anchor's mother, who investigators are talking to as the search for Nancy Guthrie enters its 4th day. Plus, a White House official confirms talks between the U.S. and Iran are on, but are the two sides past the point of de-escalation?
We prefer to meet and talk. I'm not sure you can reach a deal with these guys, but we're going to try to find out.
Welcome back. Investigators in Arizona are still searching for NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie's mother, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, who they believe was abducted from her Tucson area home over the weekend. And the sheriff's department saying today there's still no suspect, but are working closely with the family in this investigation. The president also announcing today he's spoken with Savannah Guthrie. NewsNation senior national correspondent Brian Enton has the latest there in Tucson, Arizona. Brian.
Yeah, Kelly, I'm outside Nancy Guthrie's house right now, and just within the last 5 minutes or so, you can see that van, that minivan over my shoulder. There are a number of different sheriff's office teams and FBI teams who have now shown back up at the house and appear to be getting ready to do some kind of search. There's a dog that was just out in the driveway, so we're going to keep an eye on that. This is video that you're looking at, though, from Nancy Guthrie's daughter Annie's house. Annie is Savannah's sister. And there's been action at that house, too. We saw the FBI out there yesterday, and then we saw federal agents back at that house again today. The sheriff has made clear, Kelly, that there are no suspects, that there are no persons of interest, and that this is still very much an active investigation. Kelly?
Brian, thank you so much for the updates there. And joining us now, Robin Dreek, former FBI special agent. Thank you for joining us. I mean, does it surprise you that we are now, in day 4 of this, and there's still no suspects, no updates even today from investigators, really?
Yeah, Kelly, they're most likely have a lot of things they're going through right now. The fact that they got more teams on the ground. They brought in a dog, which we just heard from Brian, which is really fascinating to me, especially since yesterday we saw a helicopter flying over right there. I'm really curious, since the ring cams didn't pick up anything with vehicles, I'm thinking that they're trying to see if they went left on foot potentially, so they might be tracking that down. So I think they're just processing a lot of data and a lot of forensics right now.
What is the next step, you think, for them here?
Yeah, and that's the challenge on this, because if it was an abduction and of this kind of notoriety, it's a really big outlier. Everything points to it's a home invasion gone sideways, but we're seeing a lot of other things come in, like ransom notes potentially and things like that, which are really, really rare. And so I think they're taking a two-pronged attack for the investigation, one for home invasion gone sideways and also the abduction side. And so the big part of this is processing digital forensics, as well as interviewing a lot of people in her life, because they got to understand who had knowledge of her, who had access to her, a couple layers of separation. So it's going to take some time to go through all that.
And, what would you do in this situation? What would be your next, or what is your inkling of what might have happened here even?
Yeah, I'd be really dialing down on the people that knew about her tempo of life, their access points, and getting in and out. The interesting thing also will be if they did take any medication, because we just don't know whether the depth of awareness they had of her concerns medically as for Nancy. So it'd be really interesting the depth of knowledge they actually had of her. I think what they left behind or didn't leave behind will be very telling for investigators as well.
Well, thank you for the time. We really appreciate it. We'll keep an eye on this very closely. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Well, Iran confirms new nuclear talks with the United States, but how trustworthy are the mullahs actually? And plus, ahead of Sunday's big game, Super Bowl bets are booming, and a new fight over who regulates them is brewing. Former Governor Chris Christie joins me live next. Stay with us. Welcome back. Bottom of the hour, approaching 6:30 p.m. here in Washington. And here are just some of the big stories we are following at this hour. In Minneapolis, Minnesota, where 700 immigration agents are set to withdraw from the city, and 2,000 will stay. Border czar Tom Homan making that announcement today. And tensions have flared in the city after 2 protesters died in separate officer-involved shootings.
President Trump sent me here to help de-escalate what was going on. We're not surrendering our mission. We're not walking away from our mission. We're just making this more effective.
And this comes as Congress turns its attention to funding DHS. House Speaker Mike Johnson at the White House today to discuss the issue with the president. Congress has until February 13th to reach a deal to fund the department, with Democrats pushing for reforms to immigration agencies. And the man convicted of attempting to assassinate President Trump will spend the rest of his life behind bars.
Judge Cannon said it best. She says, the evil is in you, Mr. Root. The evil is in you.
Our affiliate, WFLA, reporting that 59-year-old Ryan Ruth was slapped with a life sentence plus 84 months. Secret Service officers arrested Ruth in September 2024 after spotting him holding a semi-automatic rifle hidden in the tree line at Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach. And from our affiliate WDKY in Kentucky, Senator Mitch McConnell is recovering after checking himself into the hospital Monday with flu-like symptoms. The 83-year-old senator, who has suffered a few health scares in recent years, will retire from Congress after his term expires in 2027. And from our partners at the Hill, First Lady Melania Trump met with freed Israeli-American hostage Keith Siegel and his wife at the White House today. Both were captured by Hamas during the October 7th, 2023 attack against Israel.
I'm happy to see you healthy at home with your children, with your grandchildren, with your family.
Now, his wife was held captive for 51 days, while her husband, Keith, was freed as part of a U.S.-brokered ceasefire in Israel after being held for 15 months. The First Lady's initial meeting with Evita was documented in her film Melania, which was released last week. And tonight, a White House official tells me scheduled talks for Friday between the U.S. and Iran in Oman are on after reports circulated that Iran could be backing out. And that follows major escalations in the region. On Tuesday, the U.S. downed an Iranian drone that approached the USS Abraham Lincoln about 500 miles off the coast of Iran. Iranian forces also threatened to board a U.S. merchant vessel in the Strait of Hormuz, a vital global shipping artery. President Trump applying the pressure ahead of the negotiation.
Should the supreme leader in Iran be worried right now?
I would say he should be very worried, yeah, he should be. As you know, they're negotiating with us.
Our Libby Dean is at the White House for us with the latest. Libby?
Kelly, the White House was considering canceling these talks, but after that intense lobbying by about 9 Middle Eastern and Arab countries, this meeting, it's back on. It's now going to be Friday, but relocated from Turkey to Oman. And the meeting will center around this nuclear deal. But Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying today he's not sure a deal is even possible. And U.S. negotiators want talks to go further and go beyond Iran's nuclear plans and even potentially discuss Tehran's treatment of its own people in the last month.
I think in order for talks to actually lead to something meaningful, they will have to include certain things. And that includes the range of their ballistic missiles. That includes their sponsorship of terrorist organizations across the region. That includes the nuclear program, and that includes the treatment of their own people.
And just yesterday, 2 military confrontations between the U.S. and Iran. An Iranian drone was shot down by U.S. forces after it aggressively approached the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. Plus, over in the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian gunboats attempted to board a U.S. flagged tanker. Now, those military interventions coupled with Iran's demands that we've been hearing and these talks focus solely on a nuclear deal, that's what's leading the Trump administration in what we heard today play out that they wanted to cancel. But now this is back on, and heading into this, Kelly, U.S. officials telling me they are pursuing the diplomatic track here. But as we know, President Trump has been building up that U.S. military presence in the Middle East over the last couple of weeks. Kelly?
Yeah, Libby Dean, they say that they want to reach a diplomatic solution first, but are ready with other options, as they say. Thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate it. And here with me now, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you joining us on the Hill. I wanted just to kind of ask you, just coming off of that, Secretary Rubio didn't sound too confident today that they could strike a deal with Iran. I wanted to play that clip for you and just get your reaction on the other side.
We prefer to meet and talk. I'm not sure you can reach a deal with these guys, but we're going to try to find out. We don't see there's any harm in trying to figure out there's something that can be done. This is a president that always prefers a peaceful outcome to any conflict or any challenge.
Do you think talks with Iran are just a waste of time at this point?
No, listen, I agree with the Secretary of State there. I think that, the president has shown that he is willing to go after Iran when they're doing things that are contrary to America's national security interests. The bombing of the nuclear sites is the best example of that. And now his moves to put military into the straits is a strong move. Now we'll see if you can negotiate with the Iranians. I'm skeptical, like Secretary of State Rubio, that you can actually make a deal with these guys that can stick and will be a good deal for the United States. But I do think there's no harm in talking to them about it. We certainly have their attention. And while we do, let's see if we can make a deal that's good for the American people.
Do you think President Trump will ultimately move to strike?
Hard to tell. I think a lot of it's going to be what the tone and tenor and results of these talks are. So I think we'll have to see all that first before the president would probably be in a position to make any decision like that.
All right, we'll turn now to a lighter topic. We're going to talk about sports a little bit, to America's biggest sporting event. So gamblers this weekend, they're expected to spend nearly $2 billion on this year's Super Bowl. So I wanted to ask you, is that a good thing?
Look, I think it's a great thing for the American people. The fact of the matter is that this has increased people's participation in watching sports, enjoying sports, diversified the audience. And I think people really do believe that this increases their enjoyment of watching the game. And so I don't think it's a problem at all to be having this. It's something the American people have wanted for quite some time. It was only available to them in the state of Nevada before we brought our lawsuit in New Jersey to change all this. And I think what you've seen from the levels of participation is this is something the American people really wanted, but they want it done in a safe and effective way.
Now, Polymarket is also having success in the betting markets. In its most recent week, there was nearly $2 billion in trade volume on their platform. So you've said prediction markets threaten the integrity of sports. How so?
Well, because they're not regulated in any effective way. So you look at what someone like Polymarket and the other prediction markets are doing. They go into the 40 states in our country where sports gambling is legal and regulated and taxed. And they say, we're not going to be subject to the regulation and we're not going to pay the tax. Well, that's bad for two reasons. One, because it hurts those states and goes around their rules. And secondly, what are the protections? If there is no regulation, you have two levels of regulation here that really protect the folks who are betting. One, the consumers. They know if there's a problem with one of these folks taking bets, they can go to their state regulator. They can't do that with any of the predictive markets because they're not subject to the regulation. And secondly, this is about the integrity of the game. You saw in the recent cases that were brought regarding some MLB players and NBA players that the only reason those things were found out is because the industry that is taking the bets is working under regulation in conjunction with state authorities and the leagues to report this suspicious information immediately so it can be investigated, sent to law enforcement where appropriate, or to league authorities. The predictive markets don't participate that way at all. So they don't care about the integrity of the game. They don't care about paying their taxes. They don't care about the protection of the consumer. All they care about is making money. And I'm not...
We freeze a little bit there with the former governor. We'll We'll see if we could get him back. But we wanted to thank you for your time there. Chris Christie, thank you. So the Trump administration, oh, we got him back. Let's bring him back in.
Thank you.
Governor?
Sorry about that.
No worries. It happens. I wanted to ask you, too, though, what about cracking down on the sites like Polymarket and not the other forms of betting? Is that picking winners and losers here?
Well, here's the difference. The states have come in after the U.S. Supreme Court said that sports gambling was a states' rights decision. The states have come in and set up a regulatory framework, and it's operating and has operated really well now for the last 8 years. Now, if the predictive markets want to get into other forms of betting, as they are, well, then maybe that's something that needs to be regulated by the states as well, if they want to have that in the states. My point is the predictive market should be subject to regulation in the states where they want to operate. And it's worked well. It's protected the integrity of the game. It's protected consumers. So when they make their bets, they're going to get paid. They're going to get, appropriate odds that are fair. All the rest, that's all subject to the state regulation. Right now, Polymarket are rogue cowboys in the Wild West, and they don't want to play by the rules. Play by the rules that all the other folks in the industry play by, and I'm sure the rest of the industry is happy to compete with them. But when you want to play without those rules, not paying taxes, not following regulation, not protecting the consumer, and by the way, also marketing to teenagers. None of the other industry leaders allow anyone under 21 years of age to bet. Polymarket, the predictive markets, go to 18.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem as well.
Can I ask you for one more bet from you? I wanted to get your bet for your nominee in 2028. Who do you think?
You know what? The nominee for the Republican Party in 2028, I think it's going to be absolutely wide open. Like every time when an incumbent president terms out, as Donald Trump will be doing, I think it's going to be wide open. I think you had a potential candidate on the screen that you had me respond to in Secretary Rubio, I think is a potential candidate. Obviously, the vice president's a potential candidate. Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia is a potential nominee. We have some really good folks in our party who might be the nominee in 2028, and it'll be interesting to watch. I'm sure the predictive markets will want to take bets on it right away.
So you're not throwing your name in there this time?
Oh, I don't see it. You never say never, but those three names come to mind really quickly. And as for me, we'll let the 26 elections go by and then see what life brings after that.
All right, you heard it here. Never say never. Chris Christie, thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks. The Trump administration drawing down in Minnesota and ramping up the border wall, whether it's too late to flip the script on immigration ahead of the midterms. Plus, as autonomous cars drive into more cities across America, Congress is demanding answers on safety.
Expanding AV deployment offers real, measurable opportunities to reduce these deadly behaviors and to improve safety on our highways.
Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
I kind of lift this whole enterprise up like hot gas.
TV's liveliest, most honest debate.
You should be thankful for me.
Oh, God. Tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on News Nation.
Mr. President, speaking of Minneapolis, what did you learn?
I learned that maybe we can use a little bit of a softer touch. But you still have to be tough. These are criminals. We're dealing with really hard criminals. But look, I've called the people. I've called the governor. I've called the mayor.
President Trump admitting to NBC News perhaps a softer touch could have been used on the immigration crackdown in Minnesota. So joining us now is our full panel. Chris Cillizza is a News Nation political contributor and host of So What on YouTube. Megan Hayes is a Democratic strategist who served as director of messaging planning in the Biden White House. And Ashley Davis is a Republican strategist and former White House official during President George W. Bush's administration. Thank you all for being here.
Hi.
I did just speak with Congressman Comer about this, too. And I wanted to play a bit of his reaction and then get your guys' reaction to both him and President Trump on the other side. Let's listen to that.
The objective with ICE in Minnesota and the other 49 states is to apprehend the criminal illegals and deport them back to wherever they came from. That's what the objective is. So they had a lot of ICE agents in Minnesota. It was getting out of hand, and I think that, you know, they had to hit the reset button. The president, to his credit, sent Tom Homan in there. He got the temperature turned way down.
Ashley, we'll start with you. Do you think it's maybe a bad strategy that he's saying that we had to hit the reset button? It was getting out of hand. Is that bad to hear from someone who is supportive of the president's?
No. I actually think, and Comer saying that makes me believe that this is what most Republicans are saying. Yeah. But I also think that America's really good with swinging too far one way or the other. And obviously under Biden, that it would, like, the border was too open and we had so many issues. And then the president did a really great job the first year of shutting down the border, making sure that we got criminals out of our country. And what's happened in Minnesota is gone too far. And so he's course correcting. I think that the majority of the base is going to support that, but we need to figure out what the next step is in regards to making sure. I mean, I'm a big believer in that Congress needs to pass immigration reform to make sure this doesn't happen again. But I think he's made the right tone today.
Is that likely to pass immigration reform? And
no,
how do you think?
No, thank you. Easy question. Wow.
How do you think that this is going to play in the midterms?
I still think, look, this is, February 4th? I lose track. It's early in the year. Mm-hmm. The election is still 9-ish months away. My guess would be that you're going to see most Democratic candidates, I think if they're smart, run on, Donald Trump said he was going to make things more affordable. Is your life more affordable? Like, that's the winner. Does it mean that, like, there won't be candidates who won't talk about immigration? No, but I just look, I'm a big believer in people's preconceived notions tend to dictate. Which party do people trust in education? Democrats. Which party do people trust in healthcare? Democrats. Which party do people trust in crime and immigration? Republicans. Like, it's very hard to break those. Maybe it changes for a month, and this situation in Minneapolis could do that. But I think if you're a Democrat, I think you got to stay focused on sort of, it's economy, and then you want to get into immigration, you want to get into others, fine, but I don't think it changes at all, though.
And even President Trump saying at the White House, I've been covering him, he wants Republicans to actually focus more on health care and that going into the midterms, because he says if you focus on that, you will win. I wanted to ask you, when the president mentioned perhaps we could use a softer touch, what do you make of his statement there?
I think that people are reacting to the chaos. I don't necessarily think people are actually reacting to his enforcement or his policy. It's the enforcement piece of this. Mm-hmm. And you're starting to see independents and some of these moderate Republicans start to shift in these districts that they have now won in these special elections. Mm-hmm. Democrats have flipped 26 seats since the 24 election, and it is because of the chaos. And that is what he is saying. He wants a softer touch because he does not want the chaos. He doesn't want these protests. He doesn't want all these people out there. He doesn't want people like James Comer saying, we've gone too far and we need to do something different. Democrats ultimately will be focused on the economy for the midterms, but people on the margins will still vote on immigration, and Democrats have to learn how to take a line of public safety is still really important, but the enforcement piece is equally as important.
But it also speaks to how far they clearly, to the pendulum question, how far the pendulum clearly, Jim Comer is no, like, moderate Republican.
No,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
And Donald Trump hates saying that he could have done, I mean, he's not unlike every other politician. They hate saying they did anything wrong.
Right.
That's basically as close as you can get to him saying something wrong. Like, the fact that you hear softer touch and we needed to hit the reset button, clearly they saw polling, they saw other things that showed, like, you are losing badly.
That Texas district was a huge wake-up call, or should have been a huge wake-up call to them. That was a 30-point swing in a very conservative district in Texas, and that should have been a massive wake-up call to all Republicans. And I get it was the state Senate, but I think Donald Trump and the Congress is listening to that.
But I also think that Comer realizes what he's able to say, and it's okay to say from this administration. So I think he's able to come out and say, yeah, we need a softer tone. We're going to, change things up a little bit. I don't think he would do that unless he got a sign from above.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we do see, as you mentioned, the new Quinnipiac poll out today shows Americans aren't happy with how ICE is enforcing immigration laws. I believe we have that there. So this is really the president trying to rethink his tactics heading into the midterms. This is a big focus for him.
Well, the truth of the matter is two things are true, I think. One, people want people who are committing crimes, in addition to being illegally, people who are committing other crimes, to be deported. I think a majority of the country supports that. But a majority of the country also says what happened in Minneapolis over the last 6 weeks is way beyond the bounds. So the question is, can you find... Both parties, I think, are kind of in search of where's the place that makes sense politically.
Where's public safety being enforced, and where's our border enforcement, and where's ICE's actual job versus what's comprehensive immigration reform and having a pathway to citizenship? I think that is what we as a country need to focus on, and I think the folks behind us should work on that.
But, yeah, totally behind us. But I also think that Democrats have to be very careful. I mean, saying like defund ICE, defund,
yes.
You know, it kind of goes back to that defund the police thing. And
Absolutely.
so, like, I don't think they want to be saying that either, that it has to, especially for moderate candidates, that they want to come somewhere in between.
And Congress is going to be one on the moderate candidates because those are the frontline districts. So you cannot be having, you need reforms to ICE. You cannot defund it.
Yeah.
Well, all right, we'll have to leave it there, you guys. We appreciate the discussion, and we'll see what happens next in this move as they kind of seem to be changing tact here in the administration. But coming up next, why even as Congress questions the safety of self-driving cars, it may be too late to stop them. We'll be right back. Executives from the two leading robo-taxi companies, Waymo and Tesla, were on Capitol Hill today facing questions from lawmakers over safety concerns with self-driving vehicles. An investigation by our own Nexstar affiliate, KXAN, found a string of incidents in which Waymo cars were illegally passing school buses with outstretched stop signs and lights flashing as students were getting on and off. The company issued a software recall notice after that investigation. Tesla robo-taxis recently hit the streets of Austin, Texas, and reportedly experienced crash rates worse than human drivers last year. And right now, Republicans and Democrats agree self-driving cars need safeguards, but it's how they do it that still needs to be worked on. Elizabeth Vargas reports is coming up next. She will be speaking with multiple people close to the Nancy Guthrie investigation, including the Pima County chief detectives and a neighbor of Guthrie's. And that's coming up next at 6 p.m. Thanks for watching The Hill on News Nation. Elizabeth Vargas reports starts right now.